and slanted across his powerful chest was a powder horn and an ammo pouch. "Should we take cover, Pa?" inquired the boy, seated astride his roan a few yards from McNair. "No, Zach," answered Nate. "We hold still until they're gone. Remember what I taught you about how much easier it is to see something that's moving than something that's not?" "Yep," Zachary said. "And I've been practicing, Pa. The other day an old she-bear walked right by me and didn't bat an eye. She figures I was a tree or a bush, I bet." "Oh? I thought I told you to stay away from bears. Grizzlies will tear you to pieces, boy. And even black bears can be mean when—" "The Utes," Shakespeare interrupted urgently. One look showed Nate why. The band had stopped for some reason, and the last several warriors were still visible in the gap between the hills. Suddenly, the warrior bringing up the rear stretched and idly surveyed the surrounding countryside. He scanned both hills, then twisted to admire the snow-crowned Rockies. "Keep your horses still," Nate cautioned the others, and hoped the swishing of their animals' tails wouldn't give them away. There was no way to stop their mounts and the 4 pack horses from moving their tails. But at such a distance, the odds of the Ute noticing them were slim. It would take someone with sharper eyes than McNair to spot such slight motion. His own horse, a superb gelding distinguished by black leopard spots on a dusky background, was holding itself as rigid as a statue. Pegasus was the name he had given it, in remembrance of a mythical flying steed he had often read about as a child. The gelding was a gift from the grateful Nez Perce, bestowed after he helped them fight off a Blackfoot war party. Few white men owned a Nez Perce horse, although most would give a year's wages to do so. This was because the Nez Perce had been breeding their Palousas, as the breed was commonly called, ever since the days of the Spanish conquistadors. Now few horses could match a Palouse for speed and endurance. They were highly prized by all men who knew their horseflesh. Pegasus, in fact, had been the object of much envy from Nate's fellow trappers at the annual rendezvous. Some had made generous offers to buy him, but Nate had refused them all. Pegasus was the best horse he'd ever owned, the best he had ever seen, and he would rather part with an arm or a leg than the gelding. So now, as the Palouse stood stock still as if sensing their danger, he affectionately touched his hand to its neck and whispered, "Good boy." He saw the Ute warrior face front again, and moments later the band vanished into the dense forest. "Do you reckon they saw us?" Zachary asked. "I don't rightly know," Nate said uncertainly. Shakespeare voiced his thoughts. "If he did, he wouldn't let on. He'd wait until they were out of sight, then tell the rest. And as sure as shooting, they'd decide to shadow us and ambush us when we least expect it." "Maybe you're wrong," Zach said with the typical optimism of the very young. "Maybe all they'd want to do is trade. We have plenty of supplies we can do without." "Trust me," Shakespeare said. "They wouldn't settle for a few fixin's when so much more could be theirs for the taking." "Like the horses and stuff?" "And stuff," Shakespeare replied grimly. The mountain man's underlying meaning was plain to Nate, who studiously avoided glancing at the 2 women behind his son. Both his wife and Shakespeare's made no comment, but he knew they both understood. Both had lived all their lives in the Rocky Mountain region. Both were fully aware of the harsh realities of life in the savage wilderness. He tapped his heels on Pegasus' flanks and began the descent. After going 10 yards, he looked back and smiled at Winona, the Shoshone beauty who had claimed his heart the very first time he ever laid eyes on her, although he had been too stubborn to admit as much for a short while thereafter. She had on an attractive buffalo hide dress she had made herself, as she had all of the family's clothing. Her raven hair, which hung past her